Okay, what is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And today, we're going to be answering the question that I get way too often, and I feel like this is probably a video that I should have done a relatively long time ago, but we're here today to talk about, in my opinion, what are the characters that you should be focusing in on in terms of Limit Break expansion. Now, for most players out there, Limit Break expansion should not be a priority for you because the amount of materials that it takes, I mean, we're talking specifically about Sugo Fest exclusives here. The amount of materials that it takes in order to expand a Sugo Fest exclusive is ridiculous, and you should not be focusing in on expanding as many characters as you can. Your main focus, especially as a lower end or mid game, like beginner player, is not to Limit Break expand because it's a very difficult thing to do. Even for end game players, we kind of struggle with getting materials to do this. You mainly should be focusing in on limit breaking as many characters as you can, and then once you have done that, then you can focus on expansion later on down the line. So this is for players who, have the ability to expand a character, and then it's kind of deciding, which one should I do. Now, I want to preemptively say this before we get into this list. I'm not putting all characters on this list here. And another thing is if a character's expansion only gives them stat boosts, they're not going to be on this list. I'm just saying that from the get-go, so characters like Shanks' crew, V2 Snake Man, a lot of fan favorites, they're not going to be on this list. I'm talking about using your materials to really make a character even stronger than what they already are. And if a character gets stat boost, I mean, yeah, it's fine, I guess, but I don't think it's a really high priority for most players to just expand a character just to get a little bit of additional stats. And I know some characters can definitely benefit from that, but in my opinion, the way that I see it is if you have the materials to do it, you should just go ahead and expand a character to give them a new captain effect, lowered cooldown, or some beneficial effect from that rather than just stats. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So I've got technically 5 different tiers here. So let's go ahead and start from the bottom tier. I have a little notepad on the side of characters that I've kind of preemptively put into the list. So the first one that we are going to be putting into the list, if I can locate him, is V1 Snake Man. Now, the main reason why I'm putting him on the list is because I know this is a character that I mentioned, he only gives stat boost, but the main reason for that is because he has a rainbow support. He's a support character that adds 9% of every single base stat of this character to any character in the game. That is very valuable, and he was the first character in my account that I personally Limit Break expanded, and I use him almost all the time. If my team does not have a Luffy on it, he is going to be a support character 100% of the time. He is very useful to have, and look, I don't really think this is a high priority character. Remember, the characters in the top tier is the ones you should really be focusing on. But, if you have all the other ones maxed or you don't have some of the other characters, then Snake Man's not a terrible option because it's such a good support. And even outside of that, he's still a character that sees play just in generic content as well. The next one that is a relatively lower tiered one as well is Whitebeard and Marco. I was just looking on the database as well, just for clarification. This guy's actually not too bad. He does get -1 cooldown. He does get additional stats, of course, which all in turn make this character a lot better. But unfortunately, this is a character that does not see that much play, especially as a captain anymore. But he's still a really good sub unit that can be used on some teams. But again, he's a lower tiered character. Probably don't suggest too much of that. And again, another lower tiered character that I probably don't suggest is Barto and Cavendish, and the main reason for it is because Driven are not really a good class in the game, but they are still a really good defensive unit that you can use their switch effect to heal, their special ability for huge damage reduction with their threshold effect, so it's fine. They get -1 cooldown and some stats, but nothing really to write home about. The next one is a very interesting choice. Hody Jones. Now, Hody Jones gets a buffed captain effect. He becomes a 3.5 captain. He gets lots of cooldown with his captain effect. But the main reason for why I put him on the list at all is because you can partner this guy up with the brand new super type Blackbeard. And the thing is every time you take damage, Blackbeard reduces his special charge time, and this guy reduces your crew's health at the end of each turn. So you can continuously every single turn get like 2 or 3 turns of cooldown on Blackbeard. So it's really strong. I don't think it's like the best combination in the world, but there are definitely some content you can kind of cheese with just by having Hody Jones as your captain and continuously launching Blackbeard special. It's pretty interesting, and he just gets the additional stats as well, and the new captain effect. He doesn't get any cooldown reduction or anything, but just thought I'd mention it. And then the last character in this tier is going to be V2 Shanks. He does get a buffed captain effect as well. He becomes a 3.75 captain. He gets -2 cooldown, and another thing as well is that this is a character character that has seen a lot of play on Pirate Rumble on JP recently. He's still pretty good on Global, but with a lot of the characters that have been arriving on JP recently that are really powerful int units, this guy helps them out a lot. So it is something to note that, you know, this guy in Pirate Rumble is going to be really good down the line, but as of right now on Global, you know, it's nothing really to prioritize, but just thought I'd mention it, you know, and the -2 cooldown for a special as good as his is pretty good. It's exceptional, actually. So those are the only characters that I have in the tier 4. Now, tier 3 is the biggest tier that I have. The first character that I want to talk about is V1 Katakuri. Now, V1 Katakuri gets an amazing captain effect upgrade. They lower the requirement of him getting his conditional delay effect, whatever it is. He only has to reach 1.5 million damage for a guaranteed delay through all immunities. And the really cool thing is they've buffed his multiplier, so he becomes a base 4x captain when a character has both of the classes that he requires. It's really good. Now, on top of that, he also gets -1 cooldown, so he goes down to a 9-turn cooldown, and he does have a pretty good special ability as well. And of course, with all of those additional stats as well, he has one of the highest attacks in the game, like just flat out. So all of that, plus he has a really good support. I mean, his support is not a stat boosting one, but it's a really good support effect either way. But you know, that's why I put V3 Katakuri, or V1 Katakuri 6+, sorry, in this listing right here, just because of the buffed captain effect is really good. But it's a character that doesn't really see that much play. You know, I will admit, but it is a really good captain effect, and I would say it's probably warranted to use those amount of materials to get it. But at the same time, it's a captain effect that you're not really going to be using all that much, but it is a good captain effect. Now, the next one is going to be Sanji and Judge. Now, Sanji and Judge are one of my favorite units in the game. They've got a really good special ability, very usable captain effect still. Now, the really good thing about them, they get -1 cooldown and they get stats, but the main reason why this character is like better than, you know, these ones, for example, that have, you know, -1 cooldown and stats is because Sanji and Judge sees way more play compared to Whitebeard and Marco and Bato and Cavendish. So that's why I put them in this tier, because just giving them reduced cooldown is always going to be useful. And then very similarly to that is going to be another dual legend, Sabo and Koala, who also get -1 cooldown and additional stats. Now, the really cool thing is this character has pinch healing, so the fact that you are giving them additional stats means that their pinch healing is going to be recovering more. So that's very valuable to have. So Sabo, Koala, really good choice, I think. Now, the next character is an older character, but very soon on Global, they are going to be becoming very, very good, which is V2 Rayleigh. Now, V2 Rayleigh is a very interesting one. We've been talking about him a lot recently. When he gets his Super Evolution, he is really strong in Pirate Rumble specifically, and by giving him additional stats with his expansion makes him a lot more useful. He gets -2 cooldown with his special ability, and remember, his 6+ has to come out on Global yet, and the new captain effect as well. He gets an updated captain effect, and then with that Super Evolution, the new captain effect is even better. It's like a 4.5 captain when you're below 30%. It's pretty strong. So I think he's actually not a terrible choice at all in the tier 3 position. The next one is going to be Quickbeard, wherever he may be. Quickbeard is a very cool one. I was actually looking at just the Sugo Fest exclusives and seeing what they all do. And you know, Quickbeard was a really interesting one because I didn't realize how good he actually got. So he gets -3 cooldown. So he goes into a 10-turn cooldown. He gets a new captain effect, which makes his captain effect range from 3.75 to 4.5 times, depending on what your HP is, which is insane. And he gets all of those stats, and this is a character that has seen a lot of play recently on Pirate Rumble. So I think all of that combined together makes his character a relatively good choice for Limit Break expansion. So he's not a bad choice at all. So the next one is going to be another older legend, wherever he may be. It's very difficult to locate them all. Gil Tesoro. We've talked about him a lot on the channel as well. He gets an amazing captain effect. Really, really strong. He gets -1 cooldown, so he goes down to an 8-turn cooldown, I believe, which is just bonkers for what his special ability is. And, of course, the additional stats. But the only problem is that if you have a captain effect as good as his, the real problem is it's hard to locate other friend captain Tesoros, because the really interesting thing about Tesoro is that you have to hit greats in order to reach your max potential, and if you're running a hybrid lead, then it might not be as good, but at the end of the day, like, he is a much better unit than what he once was with his expansion, so it is still one that I would think, if I had the materials to do it, I would do it for sure, because he's just such a cool character, and that special ability is still definitely usable, so that's my opinions on Tesoro. And the final one in this tier is going to be Corazon. Now, Corazon, again, just all these characters get amazing buffs. They get -3 cooldown for Corazon, and remember, with his limit break, he actually has the reduced cooldown buff, so at the start of the fight, he just gets, like, reduced cooldown, which is great. He gets a new captain effect, and the new captain effect, I wouldn't say it's, like, amazing, but it's actually usable, surprisingly. And, of course, the statistics are going to be great because you want as much recovery as you can on this character, and, you know, limit break expansion obviously provides some of that. So those are all the characters I have in tier 3. So that, I think all the characters in tier 3 are probably slightly higher priority than the ones in tier 4, but, I mean, if you really want a good support unit, you know, Snake Man is still relatively good. So moving on to tier 2. So we've only got 2 characters here. Now, the first one is going to be V2 Akainu. Now, V2 Akainu, dude, he gets a pretty good glow up. He gets an amazing captain effect upgrade, so he goes to a 3.75 times boost, which in turn as well, with all the stat boost as well, his end of turn damage is enhanced very slightly as well. He does also get -2 cooldown for a special ability that he has that is still to this day very, very good, being a 2.25 orb boost to 2 colors, as well as a full board orb manipulation. It's such a powerful special. So that's my opinion on V2 Akainu. I do think he's a very solid choice for an expansion, especially if you are missing any of those super type int legends. Then this is going to be like a good captain to go for if you don't have, you know, Blackbeard or Katakuri or any of those future Halloween ones that come out eventually to global. Now, the next one in tier 2 is going to be, again, a very old school one, Blackbeard. Now, if it wasn't for his super evolution that's coming out on JP, I would not have had this guy on the list, because his captain ability, even after expansion, is not that great. However, now that we know that his super evolution is coming, I do think it's not a bad choice to expand him, because upon expansion and upon super evolution, he's a 4 times captain all the time, 1.5 health, as long as you have those classes on your team, and bypassing defensive effects, and makes Dex Orbs beneficial. Very strong captain effect. Of course, on global right now, it's not going to be good. I don't suggest maxing Blackbeard right now. I would say that Blackbeard is one to expand once we know that his super evolution is coming. Then you may want to do it, but at the same time, it really comes down to what kind of, you know, teams you can build and what kind of characters you can hybrid him with, because running double Blackbeard is not really that great. I definitely think the best way to utilize Blackbeard is to have your own Blackbeard or a friend Blackbeard, and then another captain alongside him that has a higher multiplier that can do different things. In my opinion, that's the best way to use this character. But across the board, with his super evolution and expansion, he is very solid, very, very solid unit. So now moving on to tier 1. Tier 1, I have 3 different characters. First one is going to be my man, Douglas Bullet. Douglas Bullet is a phenomenal expansion. He does only get -1 cooldown, but look, every piece of cooldown is going to help out this character a lot, because his cooldown is naturally high anyways, so getting just an additional cooldown from it is amazing, and he gets additional stats. Now, I believe upon expansion, he does have the highest attack in the game, I think. Pretty sure about that, or he's definitely in the top 2 or 3, that's for sure. Now, remember that Douglas Bullet, he wants to be doing as much damage as possible to make his special ability output as much damage as possible, and by expanding him, you can definitely do that. Now, of course, he doesn't really get that much of a buff compared to a lot of the characters here, but Bullet is pretty much better than every single other character on this list. I mean, the only character that's probably close is Sabo and Koala, I would say. Maybe V1 Snake Man to an extent, but I think Bullet is definitely the best character on this list that we've seen thus far, and giving him additional stats and cooldown is super, super worth it, in my personal opinion. I think many people would also agree with me there. Now, the next character is my personal favorite Sugo Fest exclusive in the game right now, and that is V3 Law. Dude, this character is insane. If you have this character, I would think that maxing his expansion is a very high priority. Now, what does he get from it? He does get -1 cooldown. Remember that if you do use him as a sailor, he does actually get minus cooldown every time another, I think it's a slasher or a free sprue, or anytime another character uses a special, something like that, he does get reduced cooldown again, and then by reducing his cooldown, you can get his special up even quicker. And he does get the additional statistics, which in turn help him out even more, because he also has pinch healing, very similar to Sabo and Koala, so makes his pinch healing heal for more, which is obviously very, very good. And of course, with the Cotton Candy update, we can max all of his stats with plus 100, and even further than that now, so pinch healing is even better. This character is one of the tankiest units in the game, and is one of the most offensive units in the game as well. He is so good, and giving him any sort of buff is amazing, and he definitely gets that with his expansion. I think it's a high priority. Now, next is a character that I personally don't use as a captain that much anymore, but it's going to be Sober Mask. Now, the reason why you would even limit break expand this guy in the first place is because he does get a buffed captain effect. He does not get any cooldown reduction when you expand his limit break, which is kind of a downfall, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't matter with the way that the character is built. So his captain effect upgrades upon expanding so that it will slightly increase the chances of tandem slots appearing, which, if you know how he works, you want more tandem slots to appear as a captain. Though him as a captain is not really the best because he doesn't have any damage reduction, he doesn't have any health boost, he doesn't have any recovery mechanics. So that's obviously a really bad thing about the character. But if you are the type of person that utilizes Sober Mask as a captain, I do think that expanding his limit break is kind of worth it just to get the higher chances of those tandem slots appearing. But personally speaking, as a player that has every single Sugo Fest exclusive in the game, I will rarely use this character as a captain. I much prefer to use him as a sub because as a sub, you can launch his special multiple times per run, or you can get the 2.5 times attack boost with his double special launch on that same turn very easily. You can't really get the most out of that when he is being used as a captain, but it does depend on your playstyle. But there you go. I do think all of these three characters are pretty high priority characters that you may want to consider limit break expanding. Now, we've only got 3 characters in the top tier, so these are the ones, if you have these characters, I would probably suggest doing these first before anything else. So the first one that I have on the list, now, these can be in any order, really, the ones that I'll be listing here. I mean, these aren't all in order, by the way. These are just listed here, just the ones that I thought up of first. But the first one I'm going to put here is V2 Blackbeard. Now, as you guys would know how V2 Blackbeard works, you want to be launching his special multiple times per run. You have to launch his special multiple times per run to get the most out of him. And he gets -1 cooldown from his limit break, which puts him to, I think it's 8 turns cooldown. Yeah, so every time he takes damage as a captain, he gets -2 cooldown. So in turn, just reducing your cooldown so much faster. This is definitely worth it, as well as getting additional stats, and he is one of the best characters right now on Global for Pirate Rumble. All of those things combined together, I think, is the easiest decision for limit break expansion. No doubt in my mind, this is a fantastic choice if you have the character. Moving on to the next one is going to be Legend Cracker. Now, I personally haven't used Legend Cracker all that much recently, but you cannot deny how good this character is with his expansion. Now, his base cooldown is 16. For his special, it's pretty high, but upon expanding, he goes down to a 13 turn cooldown. So he gets -3 cooldown, he gets the additional stats, and all of that in turn, I think is just making this character so much more worth running, especially during older Kizuna clashes where you'd want to use a character like Cracker, but you'd be in a situation where you don't get the cooldown quick enough. But having the expansion allowed you to do that. So even on Kizuna clashes where he's not boosted to get the additional cooldown during that fight, he still can actually be used, which is great. And, he's a very unique character that there's not too many characters that can do what he can do. I mean, V3 Law is similar in a way, but this guy, just having his cooldown on a 13-turn cooldown for what he does is exceptional. So I do think it's a really good choice to do him. But, Law is very similar, I have to say. Like, Law and Cracker are very similar in what they do. But in terms of the buff for the character, Cracker gets a way more significant buff for his expansion compared to what Law gets. I don't know. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, like, these two are so similar with their expansion because they both go down to 13, I believe, after they're completely maxed out. So, I mean, look, V3 Law might even be tier 0. It might be, look, that might be biased for me because I just like the Law so much, but I do think Cracker is a tier 0 character in terms of expanding their limit break. Now, the final character in this list is going to be Vivi and Rebecca. Now, Vivi and Rebecca are arguably the best sub in the game. Healing with their switch effect, they got 2.5 chain lock with their switch effect, color affinity, debuff removal. It's like removing the buffs from the enemy, removing rainbow shield and blue shield completely. It's such a powerful unit, and the fact is when they get their reduced cooldown, they go down to, I believe it's a 13 or a 12 turn cooldown, and there are certain content where having that reduced cooldown is like the make or break. Like, if you don't have that reduced cooldown, either it's way more difficult, or it's going to be basically spelling the end of your run. So I do think that these three are the best choices for expansion right now, but as I said, like, these ones in tier 1 are also like, yeah, you could probably do these and over these ones first, and it would be fine. Like, Law and Cracker are so similar. This guy, if you use him a lot as a captain, it's a good choice. Blackbeard, if you're using him a lot, is a fantastic choice. Vivi Rebecca is a good choice, either or. And then you got Bullet, who just gets so strong. Now, look, I haven't covered every single other Sugo Fest exclusive here. Like, this guy's really good in Pirate Rumble, you could do. He gets reduced cooldown and buff stats, you could do it as well. There are some characters on this list that don't have their expansions yet. Like Nami gets a pretty good buff from her expansion, but then you got characters like Katakuri, Kid, this Snake Man as well, Shanks crew, like characters that are really good but don't get much from their expansion. They just get stats and that's it. They don't even get cooldown. They don't get nothing. So that's the reason why I didn't put them on the list, because in my opinion, spending all of those materials just for additional stats isn't really the best. And I feel like for players out there that don't have many materials to spend, or they only have enough to expand, you know, one character at the moment, these are probably the ones that they should focus on first, because they get the most significant upgrade, the ones that are going to benefit the characters the most from their expansions. So hopefully you guys understand what I was trying to go for here, and really hope that this kind of video helped you out in terms of selecting a Sugro-Fest exclusive that you want to go ahead and limit break expand. And if you guys have any other opinions about other limit break expansions that I may have missed out on in this video, leave them down below in the comment section. I'd be very interested to see if there's any key ones that you guys may have opinions on that I maybe didn't touch up on. But I think like Legend Jack, even for example, gets a buffed captain effect, but like you don't need to do it. It's just not really necessary. Like Mihawk Perona gets stats and no cooldown, which is unfortunate. You get stats and no cooldown, which is also unfortunate. So I think overall, I've done a pretty good job with selecting the best ones, but hopefully this guy has helped you out. If you guys did enjoy the video today, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But on that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.